Today we're going to look at the subject, are scientists unbiased? In the last video, we looked at man-made global warming, and we saw that at the University of East Anglia, that some of the people that had the job of taking the data and then dispersing the results of that to the rest of the world, that they changed the data to make it fit exactly the way they wanted it. So we saw that science was definitely compromised by these so-called scientists and teachers and so on. When we look at the scientists, teachers, and professors, we see something that is nowadays the problem that every teacher or professor or scientist has, and that is a conflict of interest. Now, that does not mean that they are wrong or that they are trying to cheat the system or anything like that. But every scientist and every teacher and every professor that is in a public school, university, or that is in the scientific realm today does have a conflict of interest. And the question is how do they have the conflict of interest? That's what we're going to look at here for a little bit. First of all, we see that no one is allowed to disagree with the prescribed ideas. And of course, the prescribed ideas today are the ideas that back up the theory of evolution. Now, what happens if you do disagree? Number one is loss of influence. For instance, if you're a scientist today and you begin to say anything that even begins to hint at an idea that conflicts with the theory of evolution, you can be completely eliminated from any area of influence. That means you don't have any areas in the scientific magazines that you could publish. You can lose any positions that you have. And the same thing, of course, goes with teachers and with professors. Now, you might think that I'm exaggerating on these points, but in the last 10, 12, 15 years, everything has changed in the public arena, from being just frowned upon and maybe persecuted a little bit if you disagree with the theory of evolution, to now you actually do lose your position, and it's actually a fairly well known fact today. And of course, along with this is actually the loss of your job. And this does happen today if you even hint that intelligent design is better in just one little area than evolution, or that creationism actually is supported by the evidence better than the theory of evolution. You can lose your job. And the problem is, nowadays, with all of the areas, basically with all the technology and the communication over the internet and so on, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to get a job once you've done that, because it's very easy for anybody trying to hire you to look that kind of information up and say, oh, this person's been a real problem. Now, if you want to, again, if you think I'm exaggerating on this, I would strongly recommend that you'd look at The Icons of Evolution by Jonathan Wells. This is a documentary that deals with some of the aspects of evolution, but also it actually shows how people do lose their jobs if they disagree with the theory. Also, the documentary by Ben Stein called Expelled is also a good place to look if you want to see also documentation on people losing their jobs or losing their position or their influence. So all teachers, scientists, and professors must have a conflict of interest. That means they are not able to say anything against evolution if they desire to keep their position, influence, or job. Now, how do we see this work in the laboratory or classroom? Well, if we look at things like ages, let's say the age of the Earth or age of certain creatures, we are dealing here with radiometric dating methods. And in reality, many of these dating methods are completely eliminated or discarded if they don't agree with the preconceived ideas of evolution. It becomes a heads I win, tails you lose situation. We'll look at that in just a minute. The scientific assumptions are changed if pre-agreed upon assumptions do not line up with evolution. So let's say, for instance, it has been assumed that fossils that are found in the wrong place, let's say a fossilized footprint, for instance, is found in an area where dinosaurs were supposed to have lived, then that pre-agreed assumption can be changed and say, well, then those footprints are carved footprints. So something has to change every time in order to show that evolution is true. And that's what becomes a heads I win, tails you lose situation. There is nothing so far that we can find that evolutionists will agree upon that will disprove their theory. Because evolution is the only thing that is allowed in the books, then everything regarding the subject is much more susceptible to frauds, fixed, that is, predetermined results, and even junk science. Of course, that's what we're finding all the time now with the theory of evolution. So we have the heads I win, tails you lose scenario. Nothing can disprove the theory. Now, let's take a look at what Einstein did. Now, Einstein had theories that he then would be changed into laws. A law is something that there is never any contradiction to. For instance, you'll have the law of gravity. Okay, no one has ever found anything where gravity does not apply. Now, that does not mean that there's not things that can overcome gravity and things go up because of that overcoming of the gravity. But gravity still exists. Okay, he came up with the first and second law of thermodynamics. Now, the interesting thing with Einstein was he went to great lengths to try to disprove his laws. Was there anything he could come up with to disprove his theories or laws so that he would not have somebody else basically come in and disprove it for him? And thus, it would be kind of an embarrassing situation. The theory of evolution has done just the opposite. Evolutionists have basically made it so nothing can disprove the theory. So that all of the things, even though we find contradictions with science in virtually every area that is supposed to support the theory, we find a very interesting situation. And that is that excuses will be made to make it so that evolution is still true. Go to evelsecrets.com for more information.